In this demo, I'll be going over creating an object storage bucket using the HPE GreenLake web interface that is connected to an HPE Alletra Storage MP X10000. Here I'm logged into HPE GreenLake, selecting the HPE Solutions workspace where the X10000 is located. Next, select the service that the X10000 is in. In this case, it's SCInt. Here, if we go to Data Ops Manager, we can actually take a look at the hardware. Here we see two systems, ST11 and ST101. We will be using ST101 today. And by clicking on the machine, we can see various hardware details. Now let's go into the Object Service tab and click on Buckets to create our new bucket. Let's call this one ms-sql-bucket01. Click Next. Select ST101, which is the X10000 we'll be using for this demo. On Next. We won't be using any of these options, so click Next again. And finally, hit Create. So let's refresh the screen, and we can see our new bucket has been created at the top of the list. Here we can see nothing is in it, but I will be copying some demo files up to it shortly. And we also see our endpoint URL. Now let's go to Access Policies so we can assign permissions to this bucket. The user we'll be creating next will be assigned to this access policy. Click on plus to create a new access policy. Pick a name for the policy. We'll call this one MS SQL Buckets. Select the system to assign the policy to. In this case, it's ST101. Click on plus to add a statement. In this case, we'll choose custom because we do not need access to all of the buckets, just the one we created. This is where we're going to add which buckets this policy has access to. In this case, just the MS SQL Bucket 01. Allow access for everything. Then click Next. Click Add. And Next. You can see here that the MS SQL Bucket 01 is the only bucket that this policy has access to. Click on Create. Here's our SQL Buckets policy. So next we'll add a user to use that policy. Click on plus to create a new user. Enter the username. We'll name it MS SQL Buckets user. Again, we'll select the ST101 system. Be sure to save the one-time password that was just generated for this user. This is the only time you can see it. If you go past this screen without saving the password, the information will be lost and you will have to create a new user. Click on Next. We won't be adding this user to any groups, so click Next. In Access Policies, this is where we're going to add our MS SQL Buckets access policy, which will allow us to access that bucket specifically with this user. Click on Create and refresh the screen, and it should show our new user. Here is the MS SQL Bucket user at the top of the list. Next, let's test access to this bucket using WinSCP. Here I'm populating it with the host name, the access key, and the secret key for the user we just created. This is going over port 443 using SSL, as we have added a domain certificate to the X10000. All right, here we're in the MS SQL Bucket 01. We can see a Hello World CSV file out on the root, nothing in the backups directory, and a couple of files in the Parquet directory. We will be using the flights Parquet in the upcoming SQL demo. So now let's connect to our SQL Server and run through the demo that will read data from the S3 buckets and import it into a local database, as well as back up that local database to the S3 bucket. First step, we'll be enabling Polybase and its advanced options in SQL Server. Note that SQL Server 2025 does not actually need Polybase installed, whereas SQL 2022 did. Next, let's create the local database that we will be using for this object storage test. Name it Object Storage Demo. Now let's create a master encryption key for this database. This will be used to protect the credentials we're about to create. In step 4, let's create a scoped credential for this database. This includes the access key and the secret that we just created on the X10000. Next, let's create our external data source. In this case, the endpoint URL, which was given to us when we created the bucket. And you can see that this is using the S3 cred to log in that we just created. So next, let's actually test to see if we can read anything from that S3 bucket. From WinSCP earlier, we saw that the hello world.csv file was on the root of the bucket. So let's pull data from that. And we have 6 lines of data returned from that file, and it looks like it read it properly. Let's refresh this database list before we continue because I do not see that database that we just created. Now we can see our object storage demo database. Let's expand the tables field so we can see that there are no external tables in this database now. So let's create the table format. In this case, we're telling the database table what to expect when we pull in that CSV file. So now let's actually get the CSV data and import it into our external table. Let's refresh our table so we can see that it was actually created. There's the Hello World table now. And let's verify that there's data actually in it. So there we can see the same data that was in the CSV file is now in our external table in the object storage demo database. So next we can do the same thing with Parquet files. So the flights.parquet file that we saw from WinSCP earlier, let's actually pull data directly from that, from the S3 bucket. And we can see here that there is about 1 million lines in that file. What we'll be doing next is importing the data from that Parquet file into another external table on our object storage demo database. So again, let's tell it what kind of file format to expect in that table. Then we can actually import the data from that Parquet file. Once we've ran that command, let's refresh our tables. Now we can see that the Parquet flights table is there. Lastly, let's run a query from that table to see what is now in our object storage demo database. So here we can see that the flight data is now on our local machine that we pulled from the Parquet file. So lastly, let's run a backup of the object storage demo database now that we have some data in it. So here we're going to be backing up to the MS SQL bucket 01 into the backups directory using the same S3 cred credential we created earlier in the demo. Let's kick off the backup, and here it's completed successfully. So now let's go back over to WinSCP and check our backup in the backups directory. And here we can see the object storage demo database was just backed up.